Now, Labour has pledged not to increase corporation tax if elected as part of a drive to win business support ahead of the general election.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she would cap the tax at 25%, but could cut it to boost competitiveness. Our political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald is back with us. We're also joined by former Home Office Minister Norman Baker. Norman, can I just get your thoughts first on the story we were just covering, actually, about the chemical attack in Clapham? You're a former Home Office Minister. Your response to what has happened, and also the figures suggesting that this kind of attack is on the rise.
It is on the rise. Fortunately, it's still a minority activity, fortunately. It has a long history. If we go back to Victorian times, the idea of throwing vitriol was established then. So there's nothing new about this. And I fear in some ways that the attention which understandably is given to this particular incident may actually put ideas in people's minds. But it is horrific. It is important that the Home Office looks at the access to particular chemicals. But ultimately, if somebody wants to damage somebody else, it's quite difficult to stop them.
Let's move on, Alicia, and talk about the Labour Party. This is a reborn Labour Party saying, business, we're on your side. We want to work with you. And you were there at this event yesterday, the FTSE 100. So these are the bosses of all the big companies. And they paid a lot of money to go.
That's an understatement. 400 business leaders all paid over £1,000 per head just to have the pleasure of hearing Sir Keir Starmer, Jonathan Reynolds and Rachel Reeves all deliver these speeches to just try and assure businesses that they were now a changed Labour Party and that they were now a steady pair of hands with the economy and really pro-growth, pro-business and pro-investment.
I think we've got a clip of Darren Jones, who you spoke to at the event. Let's have a listen to that.
Actually, you will hear from most business leaders here today, they don't really need the money to build these things. What they need is for a government to fix the planning laws, to be able to deal with issues in the electricity network, to make sure we've got the skilled workers to do that. And that's our absolute focus. But look, where we do need to co-invest with business, we will. But all of our policies will be subject to our fiscal rules, which means that it must be affordable.
Darren Jones there responding, Alicia, to a lot of questions over Labour's £28 billion green investment they've been talking about for a couple of years now, but now seem to be rowing back on, unable to commit to.
So that was really interesting. That was in response to my question, which was after Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer's speeches, where they had kind of refused to say where they were with this £28 billion of green investment. You know, no one was really saying, is that pledge going to be kept? Is it going to be watered down or is it going to be scrapped? So I asked Darren Jones this exact question. He turned around and said businesses don't actually need the money, which I thought was quite astounding.
Businesses might argue otherwise.
And then my follow-up to that, which we sadly didn't have time to include there, was just, you know, is that fair to say that businesses don't need the money? And then he kind of said, well, you know, some do, some don't, and it was all a bit all over the place.
So, sorry, I was just going to say, Norman, can we bring you in on this? Just in terms of this, the Labour Party, chameleon-like in many ways, changing what it's saying. It says we're on your side. I mentioned earlier this is very much about Blair in '97, trying to take business with them, but do they take the rest of the Labour Party with them?
Or the voters, for that matter, because the evidence from opinion polling is that those who are inclined to vote Labour find the two most attractive policies to be the exemption from taxation for private schools to be ended, and also, secondly, for the Green Deal that the government in waiting, because that's what it is really, has put forward. So if the Labour Party abandoned its £28 billion green investment plans, which, by the way, I think are quite sensible in terms of creating jobs and tackling climate change and helping reduce bills for poorer people, there are many pluses about it. If it abandons that, then it will actually be adverse in terms of its own supporters and alienate its own supporters. So they're going to be quite careful. The policy the Labour Party is pursuing at the moment, it seems to be that whenever they're subject to an attack by the Conservative Party or by the so-called popular press, is to say, OK, we'll abandon that idea. They try to negate any negative headlines they get by abandoning policies. Well, you know, Labour Party supporters I speak to want a left of centre government. They don't want a Tory government under different colours that's just more competent.
Lots of people have been getting in touch about this, Alicia. Tom saying, I think Starmer's trying to knit the UK together. He seems to zig and zag, but then steadies up and pushes on. He's not perfect, but he's observing and learning. Jackie has texted her message with the word talk to 87222. Why does Labour have to pretend to be Conservative to be elected? They'll not be able to dispense with their socialist roots once in government. Freedom matters. The closer they are getting to number 10, we are seeing quite a shift, not least in the cozying up to bankers this week.
Definitely, and that was another thing I put to Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I said, you know, lots of the policies that you have spoken about today are actually in Conservative Party territory. Having said that they want to change the party, change the government, the Conservatives are terrible, they're actually keeping quite a lot of what the Conservatives are doing. So I did put that to Darren Jones. He said there's no point in changing things that do work, but what they're going to do is change what doesn't.
Alicia and Norman, thanks very much indeed. Good to hear from both of you.